Welcome back to The Mentors. This is Vadim and Sergey, and this is a show where we tell stories of ordinary people that became extraordinary entrepreneurs despite lack of experience, money, or connections. And today on the show, we have Kaylee Christensen and Kelly Oriard, and they are founders of Slumberkins, and we're super excited to have them on the show because they have a really, really unique story. Now, you guys, at this point, the company has done $3 million in revenue. You're on track to do $3 million in revenue this year alone. You've been on Shark Tank. You obviously are much further along, probably than maybe you even imagined you would be when you came up with this idea while you were both on maternity leave. And between the two of you, you have 6 kids. Is that right?
Yes.
How many kids did you have when you started the company?
I had none. This is Kelly. I
Oh.
had 0.
No, you had one.
Well, no, I had him, and then we started. We started it simultaneously.
Well, but we started it on maternity leave together.
Okay.
So you had one.
I guess I had one.
And I had 3.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Who can keep track? No, hopefully you can.
Too many to keep track of.
But it's pretty crazy to me because, financially, a lot of people will think, I can't start a business because I have student debt, or I'm a mom or dad, or, there's all these other responsibilities. You guys were educators, and you were in roles that aren't, you weren't investment bankers or consultants where you were pulling in a ton of money that could fund a company like this. And I think you even mentioned that during maternity leave, you took turns paying yourself $700 a month, right? Mm-hmm. Which is not a ton. And yet you decided to start this company. So how did the idea come about for Slumberkins? And then why were you motivated to take the plunge and take the risk?
Well, I think for us, we had an idea, and I don't think we had big dreams of what it could be, but we didn't really know or understand the steps that it was actually going to take to get there. And so every step that we took was like a big celebration. So as we came up with the concept of Slumberkins, which was to promote emotional wellness in children and to give parents tools to teach that to children, and we thought of, creating these little snuggly creatures that were unique and stuff that you couldn't find in the stores, that we couldn't find in the stores for our own kids. We just taught ourselves to sew with an initial $200 investment, actually borrowed from my mom at the time because
Thanks, Mom.
On unpaid maternity leave from education, and taught ourselves to sew and started creating these products. And we didn't have expectations around, we need to get to $1 million in sales. I think we joked about it, one day we could maybe do that, but we sold out of 20 of them that we sold at a craft fair, like a local high school, and we were on fire. We were so excited about it. We're like, the Slumberkins sold out. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think from that $200 initial investment into fabric, we made $700 on the first craft fair. And so then we took that $700 and went and bought a whole bunch more fabric and then turned that into, I think, probably $1,200. And we just kept reinvesting everything that we made in revenue back into buying bigger lots of fabric. And this was our handmade side hustle at this point, where babies were sleeping, we were sewing. And at the same time, we realized, okay, our maternity leaves are coming to the end. What are we going to do? This is an amazing opportunity, and people are resonating with it. So I actually pitched the story to multiple publishers and book agents and got no's. And so then we were like, all right, we're just going to figure out, we're going to do it ourselves. And so Kelly writes all of our stories as the therapist behind the brand, and I'm the special education teacher. So Kelly really infuses each board book with a therapeutic technique that makes doing preventative interaction and therapeutic empowerment with your kids. We kind of call our board book series like an emotional toolkit for parents to use with kids. But I make them approachable and digestibles for parents to use.
So what was the unique idea when you were starting off? Because obviously you learned how to sew, and I guess you were writing these books as well. But talk about why you were even motivated to start something like this and what was different about it.
I think with both of our careers working in education, we both experienced that if parents were involved in the process of supporting a child through a difficult experience or wanting to be more involved in their emotional development, the child always made more progress if a parent was involved in the process.
Yeah. definitely. As a therapist, that's the number one thing that you look for, right? That the parent is giving the message, not necessarily somebody else. So you give the power to the parent to be able to empower their child to do the things that we were seeking to help them with, like self-esteem, relaxation, mindfulness, these kind of things that, as a parent who doesn't maybe have training on it, you're like, oh, I would love my child to, be able to have really great self-esteem if they get bullied and feel, bad about themselves. But what tool is that? How do you actually instill that in a child? And so helping create tools that parents can use to start building that up at a young age before their brain is completely formed, which at age 5, 90% of the brain is completely formed. So
what was the very first product? I mean, did you already have this kind of figured out in your mind? This is what Slumberkins is. And was it a book and the stuffed animal that you, like one version of it that you just started taking to fairs?
Yeah. So if you actually look up the hashtag spoon and moon on Instagram, you can see some of our very first handmade creatures that are now selling for like $300 on buy sell trade pages. It's crazy. And our first stories were printed just on cardstock, and we wrapped them up with twine, but people resonated with the story. And so all along the way, while we were selling kind of this handmade version, we were behind the scenes trying to figure out how to scale and how to produce more, because we couldn't keep up with the demand. And we really grew the demand on social media. And it was this, the magic of Instagram. We didn't pay anything for marketing for almost 3 years into the business because of social media. And I called it for the longest time the Instagram troll hour, where I would just go and find like micro influencers, great moms that I thought would resonate with this product, that had maybe like 1,000 to 5,000 followers that might share about it if they love it, because we didn't have a budget to pay them to post. And so we just offered to send the product. And that's really how we gained the traction that we did, because parents want things that are number one, cute to post on Instagram with their child, and number two, that makes them feel good. And I think that's the thing with Slumberkins. You do the bedtime routine or the story with one of the creatures. The child loves the creature to snuggle with, and the parent loves the message that they're instilling with their child.
So it sounds like the first initial indicator you had of this being a potential business opportunity is selling out at the what was the events that you did?
We did 3 local craft fairs in our community in the Pacific Northwest, and then we put them on Etsy. And it was really through the traction from Instagram driving to Etsy that we kind of gained this organic traction, because we couldn't keep up with the demand with us hand making them.
So talk about that experience, because there's a lot of people that, have a product in their mind that they think could change the world or be really impactful in some way, shape, or form. And then they go out there and they struggle to get those initial sales. So what was your process when you were trying to sell through Instagram? Like, talk about, you open up your phone, or you open up the accounts, how many people are you reaching out to? What are you saying to them to get them to post? What are the tactics of actually getting those sales in the early days?
Yeah, I think, well, that was a lot of questions at once.
Well, you had some early validation, it sounds like, from these craft fairs where you saw some demand.
Yeah.
And once you had it on Etsy, you had it online, and now how do you drive traffic to it? And I guess Instagram was a primary.
Yeah, when we first put them on, I wouldn't say they looked exactly how they look now. And I think one of the things that we tell other people who are starting to put products out there is you can overthink an idea to death. And we really subscribe to the idea that like good enough is good enough for now, right? And we would rather see people buying it and giving us feedback or putting it out there and taking the risk than holding back, thinking about it, iterating so much that you think it to death. So we put them out there, and the things that did well, we asked for feedback, and we just kept iterating on that.
And then from like a growing eyes around the community of the brand, the Instagram troll hour, I would spend hours after I put my kids to bed. I would lay in my bed and I would spend probably 2 to 3 hours just sending DMs to different moms that I thought would resonate with the product. And the messages were always like, very personalized. It was never a copy and paste message. I always looked at who they were as a person and read some of their blog, if they had a blog, looked and found their children's names and said, hey, I'd love to send a Slumberkin to, I don't know, Sam. And I think he'd really like this because this message promotes self-esteem. And so I'd always personalize it and then give it a really human touch and just explain, we're moms on a mission, we're educators, and we'd love for you to try out a Slumberkin. Let us know if you're interested. It was never a transactional thing. It was never, and some of the ones that I reached really high that had maybe 1 million followers would respond with, oh, here's my agent, or, oh, I'm only doing paid promotions at this time. And our response would always be, thank you so much for the response. We don't have the budget to participate in paid promotional advertising. We'd still love to send you the product if you're open to it. If not, no worries. And after we would send that kind of message back, then they'd be like, okay, just send it to me.
Oh, wow.
And I think we built a lot of authentic and genuine relationships that way. We never outsourced for an influencer agency to do campaigns with. We've always managed those relationships in-house and really built those relationships. And I think it's benefited us and them because really the way that you can grow on social media these days is really by people see through the ads immediately. And really social media being the new word of mouth, people want to talk about what they're passionate about. And most parents are most passionate about their children. And so I think that our product is we're like the founder market fit. And the product is kind of on this, it's a great fit for what everyone is really focused on right now in today's day and age of kind of building emotional wellness.
That's incredibly important, though, that authenticity, because that's why you were able to get traction with people. You weren't necessarily looking for that quick win, which is why you made it personal, which is why you also still followed up and offered to, give them the product. And that ultimately built the relationships where I'm sure, you started to see measurable results from some of these people that would then post about you. So now, was it pretty clear when you reached somebody that, let's say, shared it on Instagram and they had 100,000 or 500,000 followers that you quickly saw the revenue numbers increase? Or did it depend on how engaged their audience was? Were you able to measure the
I don't know
returns?
that we were able to measure really well at that time. We weren't sophisticated enough to be really tracking data at that point. But we did have a couple of hits where we got to, some celebrities or B-list celebrities in our minds were big time celebrities. And, they posted about it. And I don't think that we could attribute any sales to that. It was really the people who had engaged audiences that really resonated with the message that became our loyal followers that really started to convert to sales. And it's only recently that we've really honed in on the data behind that. But so we don't necessarily look at they have 2 million followers. If we get it in their hands, that's going to make all the difference. We've seen time and time again that's not how it goes for us.
Yeah, and we've actually seen the same thing with even how we grow our show. Sometimes we'll get on a podcast, let's say, that has a huge listenership, and then we notice a little blip, but then it kind of goes away. And then sometimes we get on a smaller show, but for some reason the audience really likes maybe the episode, or we sounded really good that day. Our voices were spot on. Who knows what it is? And then all of a sudden we'll see a more consistent growth. So just because the numbers are really high doesn't mean that it's going to net immediate results that are incredibly visible. Sometimes you just have to work with the audiences that might be the best fit. But you guys did say that at some point you couldn't sew all these things yourself. So you were seeing some growth and you needed to figure out how to scale it. What was the next step?
So this was the really great thing about having a co-founder. So Kaylee and I doing this together, because Kaylee's focus was really on our community that we were building in the moment, and she was listening to them and helping cultivate this community, and it allowed me to start thinking forward for the brand. So probably 9 months before we actually placed our order, I was digging around trying to figure out, how do you scale? How do you produce something that's not handmade? How do you go overseas? And of course, I had no idea. So where do you go? Google. And I just started Googling, how do you do that? And actually in the manufacturing world, it's really tough. Like, people don't share their contacts. It's not really readily available. I found out later that you can like get brokers who help connect you to manufacturers overseas. And of course, Alibaba is a thing now. But at the time when I was doing it, those kind of things weren't really popping up. And so I found a couple, and I ended up sending emails and just shooting for the stars and writing the president of a company that I had found that worked with, you know, the likes of Disney and DreamWorks and IKEA. And I was like, okay, this is obviously like top of the line where we should be aiming. I'm just going to write the guy and see what he thinks. And obviously our MOQs at that time, the amount that we were trying to order was much lower than he would ever accept. But I think he was really inspired that we just wrote him and tried to strike up a conversation. And over the 9 months of time that we were working through with other manufacturers that we had started relationships at the same time, at the end of the line, he ended up lowering his MOQs for us, and we got in the door with a, you know, top of the line manufacturer who took a chance on us, which has been game changing for Slumberkins.
And he was the one, he introduced us to now our strategic mentor. Her name's Maxine Clark. She founded Build-A-Bear. And so it's through these connections and mentors of people that really believe in your mission and the brand that want to meet you halfway just because they believe in your mission. It's opened so many more doors behind the scenes.
That's so cool. We talk so much on our show about not being afraid to take a chance and actually reach out and ask people for help and not shoot yourself in the foot by assuming that they're not going to respond to you. And even if they don't, who cares? Do you remember what you said in the email to that person?
Yeah, I think I said, you know, hi, you know, I know we're a small brand and that you work with huge brands, but we're trying to figure out how to scale. And I know you're an expert in that, and I would love to just understand your expertise a little bit better and know what kind of things you look for when you partner with somebody. And then, of course, he told me, and it was like way outside. I think I was looking to produce like 5,000 total Slumberkins at that time, and his per SKU MOQ was like 5,000. So it was a little bit wild, but it was really good context for me too, to understand, okay, that's where you have to get to work with somebody like him. And he had written back and said, you know, I really admire your entrepreneurial spirit that you reached out and you asked me these questions, because I don't get a lot of emails like that. So it was fun for him to respond and kind of help somebody who was at an early stage.
From that first email to when you guys actually established a relationship and had him ship you guys the product, what was the amount for that order and how long did it take?
So I think we placed the order in July. And it ended up being for 14,000 units.
Wow.
So, and that was the right number for us at that time. So from when I had reached out to him in December, I think, to July, I was looking for 5,000 at the time, but we had grown so much by the time we placed it. 14,000 was a stretch, but it was the right number for us at that time. So it was really still relationship based, right? Like we kept it away from being transactional, and every step of the way, we knew he was meeting us halfway. So we would always follow up. We sent a gift basket saying, thank you. You know, treating business relationships, everybody knows it's business, but when you put that extra effort in and you put the extra touch to say, you know, this means a lot to me and what you're doing is so helpful to me, people want to help because it feels good to mentor and help other people.
Yeah, too many people look for the quick wins and they don't invest enough time into actually building relationships. I mean, even the fact that you thought of sending a gift basket, somebody else would be like, oh, I'm not going to send somebody a gift basket. What if they don't work with me? Well, so what if they don't end up working with you? That's going to make them feel good about the relationship. Maybe they'll introduce you to somebody that will. And clearly here, it took 6 months for you guys to establish that relationship. You know, some of the coolest things that we've gotten to do, like write for Forbes and write for Harvard Business Review, for example, or have really cool guests on the show, like LeVar Burton, they take time to actually come together. They take building relationships, let's say with a PR agency, building relationships with senior editors, and eventually pitching them enough times where they say, okay, we'll give you a shot. Then the article does well, for example, and then they ask you to write again. So these things do take time. But what's cool about your story is you guys actually bootstrapped this business for a while. And it seems like you guys had pretty fast growth, but still, until you got to $2 million in revenue, you didn't raise any outside funding, right? What ultimately made you decide, okay, maybe we should raise some money for this, and how'd you go about doing that?
I think that was a question we were asking ourselves. We got plugged into a scalerator in Portland called Startups, and it was a founder-to-founder mentorship program where we were able to connect with other people who were had startups and had been through various stages of owning a startup. And it was the first time that we started hearing about fundraising. And for us, because we had such quick turns and we had this scarcity model, we were struggling to understand, like, why do you raise money? You know, we have all this product, we sell out immediately, and then we have all this cash, and then we just reinvest it, and we have this kind of flow going. And I remember reaching out and asking people, like, why? I don't understand. What is it about fundraising that, you know, why people do this? And I think about 2 months later, we hit that point where it was like, oh, this is why. Because to get beyond where we were at, which was just, you know, selling, having the money, draining the money down, putting it back in, we had these opportunities in the pipeline that were constricted by, our choices on it were constricted by cash. So if we wanted to bring somebody in to start really growing the business in, you know, let's say we wanted to start doing digital advertising, right? Like we didn't have that budget allocated from the money that was coming in, that was all going back into product. And so we really needed to start to figure out, well, how do we want to scale this business and what are the funds that we need? And that was really the basis for saying, okay, we have this thing that's going, we want to put some money towards some advertising. And that was the impetus for doing our first seed round that we did right before the holidays of 2018.
And you guys ended up raising $500,000 with that seed round. Now, your first exposure to fundraising was, I believe, when you got on Shark Tank in 2017, right? And tell us about that experience, because I guess you guys didn't get a deal, right?
No, we didn't even get an offer.
You didn't even get an offer. Now, hopefully it did create a blip in sales, or maybe more than a blip. But tell us what happened between then not getting that deal and walking away from that experience, and then actually learning how to present this as an investment opportunity to investors.
Yeah, so Shark Tank was one of those things that for Kelly and I as educators, you know, we called ourselves accidental entrepreneurs for the longest time, because Shark Tank was the thing that really made us think bigger for the brand. It made us think through what our mission, vision, what our 3 to 5 year strategic plan is. Even filling out that application made us better business owners, because it just made you have all of your ducks in a row before you can even get on the show. And then once we were on, it was a crazy experience. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. It's really intense. It's a real conversation about taking on investment. And on the show, we did not realize the difference. When we were on the show, we didn't realize the difference between an angel investor and a venture capitalist. That's how early we were. And we were still making product in the USA at that time. Actually, the day that we aired on Shark Tank was the day that our first PO that Kelly talked about, the 14,000 units that landed in the States,
Wow.
unpackaged. So then we were up against the holiday timelines with shipping and e-commerce. And so then that was a whole other problem to solve, which we've come to realize owning a business is all about problem solving and kind of thinking ahead and strategizing about when you think something might break and what you need to get ahead to be able to prevent that.
And I would say as we went out and started really raising our first seed round, we got our hands slapped a couple times by seed funding groups in our city, and for not really understanding the lingo and what they were looking for and your pitch deck, which I would say the first time we did our pitch deck, I thought that was like, okay, I did it and there's the final pitch deck and now I'm going to show it to people and it's going to be amazing. No, your pitch deck evolves every day pretty much, and it changes, and it's just an ongoing conversation. And those were hard-learned lessons, actually, as we went through fundraising and learning how to present it to investors. And actually raising as a woman is very different, I think, than men who go out to raise money. So that was something that we felt a big difference on as well.
So to that point, what do you say now to get investors excited? How did you figure out how to do that? Like, what are the words that come out of your mouth as two women that are building this company? But how else do you say the right words to get people excited?
So I think this kind of goes back to when we were hand making Slumberkins. A former basketball coach of mine that had started a business that was kind of helping us along said, just finish this sentence. I'll know you've made it. I'll know I've made it when. And the two of us kind of sat there and thought about it. And our answer, even in the very earliest days, was when there's Slumberkins on ice. And so we always had a very big vision for what could come of the power of these tools that we were providing, along with characters, more unique characters than anyone has ever put out there. And I think that that's another piece to the puzzle. Early on, we invested part of this. The funds that we reinvested were to protect the IP around the characters, the design of their faces and their bodies and how we were sewing them. And that's, benefited us. And now when we're fundraising, we really lean on that big vision. And it's all about the mission and empowering parents. Mm-hmm. And it's led to a lot of really exciting opportunities.
Yeah. And I would say, like, on that first slide after your, title slide in the pitch deck, you have your one-liner that catches everyone's attention, right? And ours says, "We are the modern day Sesame Street."
Yeah. Yeah. And
that
so,
does feel big.
Yeah. And then it's crazy what can happen with this kind of traction. So the really exciting news in our world right now is that we're in a co-production with the Jim Henson Company to produce a Slumberkins television show based on our characters.
Oh,
so
wow.
it really is like the characters are coming to life, and we're currently in negotiations with a global streaming platform. So we don't know exactly where it will end up yet, but we're that much closer to Slumberkins on ice.
That's so cool. Wow. You're becoming a content company too. I'm curious. It's part of what's exciting to me about hearing a story like this is it sounds like you backed into this whole thing and just figured it out along the way. You came up with the idea. I mean, you were domain experts, obviously, but you just went out and did it. And even though maybe you had some friction with, let's say, investors early on because you didn't know all the terminology, it didn't matter because you had the traction. And ultimately, people care more about that than anything else. So I know with Shark Tank, this is going to be a two-part question, but with Shark Tank, you recorded in September, it aired in December. November. Okay. So 2 months turnaround. Tell me what happened with the business then and how you were able to keep up with increase in demand or even plan for something like that. Because I know you can't really plan for it. And also fast forward to now and talk about sort of how your roles are different now, what the company has evolved to.
Yeah, I would say getting the email, because you only get to know 2 weeks before you're going to air. So we really thought that we would be airing, we would have some more time to get ready after we filmed. And then we got that email and, our heads exploded because our shipment was actually planned to ship out around that time. We ended up having to air freight everything in, again, unpackaged. So once we aired on Shark Tank, it was this amazing opportunity. The timing worked out right to have our PO land the day it aired, but there was still a ton of work to do. We did not have a fulfillment center set up. We were doing all in-house fulfillment. We had to package all of the Slumberkins, the 14,000 Slumberkins that came in on that plane. So we didn't go to Thanksgiving that year. We didn't have a Christmas that year.
Did you hire help?
We did, but some of the lessons that we've learned over and over again is that as we get into these spaces where you're making quick decisions or you're trusting that somebody is going to do something to alleviate a stress for you, that it can often be a siren's call, right? You have to be really careful about who you trust to hand over stuff to. So we ended up bringing on a fulfillment center last minute because this was all so rushed, but they ended up not being able to do what we needed fast enough, and we ended up taking it back from them and ending up doing it ourselves anyways. So there was some definite gray hairs that came in after that, but it really catapulted us into this place where I think a lot of people who air on Shark Tank, they have a jump in sales or views, right? And then it kind of dips off, or you have a low year after that. And Slumberkins never had that. We had customers and people who saw us that resonated with our story, and they stayed on. And actually what we did after Shark Tank, we surpassed by, 50% or so in the following Easter release that we had.
No, 100%.
100%.
Wow. And so, you guys told us in the pre-interview that last year you did $1.5 million. This year you're on track to do $3 million. Next year I'm sure it'll be $6 million. But talk about then where you are now, how you're dividing responsibilities, what your respective roles are, and how big the team is.
Yeah, so Kelly and I are co-CEOs, which is non-traditional, and especially as female founders, but we really operate like a yin and yang. So my brain really focuses on the creative. I kind of operate as like the creative director for the brand, and I get into the weeds with the marketing team and really focus on the content. My voice is kind of the voice that people see and hear on social media. Kelly is really great at strategy and operations and content. So the therapeutic content that comes through in the books and all of the, I'll ask her to write a blog post and she'll just brain dump. And then I take it and I edit it and make it more approachable and digestible for consumers and that's kind of the perfect marriage where Kelly's the therapist, I'm the teacher. So like I'm framing it up for parents to be able to use with kids. But I would say from a fundraising perspective, with me being so focused on kind of the sales and marketing side of the brand, it's really lent Kelly the time to be able to focus on strategy and making sure we have the right people at the table, which is great that she's a therapist.
Know how to scout them out.
Interesting. And do you go to pitches together when you're fundraising?
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
You guys seem like you're stronger as a team. You know, one of the things that we talked about before we hit record in this interview is that when you're become a mother, and let's say you're on maternity leave, that's a lot of the times where people don't go back to the jobs that they were at because they realize, well, I'm either spending time with my kid or I'm at this job, this soul-sucking job. So I might as well be spending time on the things I actually want to be doing. And here you are, two friends that have been friends since you were 14 years old that decided to start a company together. What would you tell to that mother who maybe is considering of not going back to the job, and maybe she has an idea in her mind, thinking about who to start it with? You know, what would you say from your experience of starting this company together that worked really well, you having been really close friends and decided that, you know what, we're going to jump in on this venture together? A lot of people think it's really risky to jump in on something with your close friend. So if there's somebody that's considering doing something like this with their close friend or their sibling, how should they measure whether that they should jump into it or not?
I think, Kaylee and I didn't think about it that much, but now looking back, I can say like the yin and yang of our personalities and how we work together really lends itself so well to what we are doing. And the one thing that you have to have beyond anything is a deep level of trust, and knowing that the whole reason for us that we started this was based on our friendship, was based on becoming mothers at the same time. It was our kids are interconnected, our families are interconnected. If there is no us, there is no Slumberkins. And so when it comes down to those hard times, when we're fighting about stuff like on a campaign or something, we can always lean back on like, at the end of the day, we love each other and we're gonna come up against these things that are gonna challenge pieces in ourselves, right? Like shadow parts of ourselves that we need to work on anyways. And what better place to do it than together and to create something that's beautiful that we're trying to give to other moms and other families. And the mission of our company aligns so well with the mission that we have in life, which is to become better people and to have great emotional wellness. And so that's why we're co-CEOs too, because if you can't be emotionally well, like you can't be in relationship. So if we're bumping up against stuff, there's a way to work through that. And we don't have to have one power over the other. We are a partnership and we want to bring that to families and to kids as well.
And how big is the team now at Slumberkins?
We have 10 people right now. We're actively hiring.
Any specific roles that you guys are hiring in case someone's listening?
Yeah, a social media manager for sure, because I'm still doing the copy and posting on social right now. But social media manager, potentially an art director. I need to be able to kind of talk high-level creative vision and then have someone execute on it, because we are starting to venture more with the entertainment opportunities ahead. We both have to be focused on those pieces as well. And so I think right now we're trying to figure out who is the right team to surround us with that can really carry the brand while we're really focused on the high-level content and vision.
There you have the co-CEO of a multi-million-dollar company still doing the social posting herself, because that matters. And Sergey and I do the same with our podcast. Co-CEOs Kelly and Kaylee with co-hosts Vadim and Sergey. Thank you so much for coming on the show. What's the best place for people to find
Slumberkins.com, or on Instagram, just at Slumberkins.
Awesome. And we'll, of course, share all that information in the description and show notes as well. Again, Kaylee, thank you so much. I'm so glad we got connected. This is an awesome story. We hope that it inspires everybody that thinks that, you know what, maybe this is not the right time to do something because, let's say, I'm a new mother or whatever it is that's happening in your life. If you have that idea and you're excited about it, maybe it is the right time. You should give it a try. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.